and Morio. Whoops.
I know. I've been yelling about
Stop
that fucking pen the
you
whole
haven't
time.
been yelling. You've been giving me passive-aggressive looks.
And hand gestures.
Fucking bitch.
Hand gestures. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Brotherhood Without Manners. I almost said manners there, like back on the first episode.
We are Brotherhood Without Manners.
Fuck, I did exactly what I did that first episode. Son of
a bitch.
Well, oh well. So, I'm Nate, the one fucking things
Oh,
up
you're
today,
just going with it.
and this is Zach. We are a full spoiler reread podcast of George R.R. Martin's A Song of Ice and Fire series, currently reading A Game of Thrones, and today we are reading Catelyn Stark chapter
Manners.
point of view.
Manners.
Shut the fuck up. You're an asshole.
Manners.
Brotherhood Without Manners. I still dream about being a Brotherhood without banner, and so one day I'll get there.
That was excellent. That was a train wreck. It is an exciting time. We are about 10 days away, roughly, from Season 8 airing. We just got a new teaser-ish promo type trailer, and we also got a promotional poster. Let's discuss the poster first, because I like the poster.
The poster's super sick.
The way, my first initial thought was, and if you've seen it, you know that it's all the main cast kind of arrayed in the layout of the Iron Throne. To me, I thought of the way the White Walkers like to lay out their victims, as we've seen in those weird sort of arrangements. That's what initially caught me off guard. And then I don't think it's any type of foreshadowing, like we kind of mentioned earlier. In season 5 or 6, they had all their faces up in the Hall of Faces, which, you know, didn't mean that every single one of them could be a faceless man now. It just meant,
and so to start, I think that for both of these. I don't think that either of these are foreshadowing anything to come necessarily. I mean, maybe there's some minor subtle stuff that they'll be like, yeah, that's exactly why we did that. But for the most part, I think these are just fun. Let's hype everybody up.
Yeah, I definitely with the promo that they aired of it's called Aftermath, of just sort of the winter snows blowing through Winterfell, and we see what looks to be the aftermath of a battle with the Hand of the Kingpin and Bran Stark's chair demolished, and Longclaw and Jaime's hand, and it just, everything looks all fucked up.
Every time you say Hand of the Kingpin, I just think of the villain Kingpin.
I know, I just heard it myself.
It's so hard not to jump over to that, but yeah.
But I think it's more of a will they, won't they? Like this could be a potential outcome for our heroes, but we'll have to wait.
So the poster's definitely cool. My first thought was just that it was fucking dope.
Yeah,
like it
really
just looked
cool.
sick. Like in that Iron Throne with the bodies, and so that was cool. When I was messing around on Twitter today, and I asked, what people were thinking on it. One guy just said he doesn't like it. Nope, didn't like it. And so I kind of decided to make a reach and figured, if we really wanted to force it to mean something, we could potentially say that it's a metaphor for breaking the wheel. In order for the throne to exist, they all have to die. So in order for the wheel to be broken, they needed to take care of that throne. The throne can't exist while everyone else is alive and happy, so it needs to come down. But like I said, I'm just tinfoiling it for the sake of fucking around on Twitter.
Yeah,
because I'm pretty sure it's a poster.
It's building hype.
And it's cool. I think it looks cool.
I'm hype as fuck.
But yeah, the promo also, there's some cool. I mean, they're cool. What do you want? What do you want from me? I like them.
I think they're nailing it, building hype. We're only a couple days out now, almost getting close to just a week out. So I think they're doing great at building the hype. As I said earlier to you, that I haven't been this excited for a show to wrap up since Lost, and quite a few shows that I was a big fan of have ended since then, and none of them have gotten me as hype as Game of Thrones has, and Lost. Lost is one of my all-time favorite shows, as you well know.
What?
But
you like Lost?
Game of Thrones is... pretty sure surpassing it at this point. So I'm hype, and I'm excited for the 14th.
Yeah,
But
it's going to be good.
in the meantime, we are reading Game of Thrones. And if you joined us last episode, we were reading Brandon 3. And Bran had a decent little dream trip fall thing.
Yeah,
and,
he was tripping balls in the Raven's head, the Crow's head.
Managed to sort of awaken his third eye, his inner eye. He's woke as fuck. Stay lit, bro. And so, just foreshadowing great adventure and exciting, kind of crazy things to come for Bran. So that was exciting. He also, in sort of his visions, had seen our current week's chapter, Catelyn, on a boat, and in front of her he had said that there was a storm brewing that none of them could see. And so that's sort of where we pick up here with Catelyn 4. Cat is standing at the rail of the ship that Bran saw her on, and is told that they will be making King's Landing within the hour. She's told this by Captain Morio Tomatis.
Yeah.
I'm trying to write down specifically all the names we come across so I can try to improve my vernacular of them.
I call him Tomitis.
Tomitis, I like
Morio
that.
Tomitis.
I can go with Tomitis.
I like Tomitis.
Catelyn says that the oarsmen have done well and promises each one a silver stag as a token of her gratitude. He responds that it's just an honor to be carrying such a high-born, lovely lady as herself.
But you'll take the silver stag anyway.
Catelyn isn't really buying the flattery and says, but they'll take the silver all the same. He smiles at her, and Catelyn sort of has some inner thoughts about him, saying he spoke the common tongue well, with only a slight hint of a Taroshi accent. He'd been on the sea for 30 years, he had told her, as an oarsman first, then a quartermaster, and finally captain of his own ship, the Storm Dancer, which I immediately thought back to, again, the storm that they could not see. This one's sort of dancing on the precipice of the storm.
Yeah.
And it was his fastest ship, and also the fastest at White Harbor when she and Rodrik had arrived there. Rodrik had some trepidation about buying this boat. He wanted to go with a fishing boat.
Something smaller, less conspicuous.
And a little bit of racism showed through here when he said Tyroshis are known to be wealth hungry. They're greedy. They'll upcharge.
Which we clearly find actually is very true.
It's true for this particular Tyroshi, but let's not, put everyone in a box here.
I mean, we could probably come up with a few more Taroshis.
But Catelyn had insisted on a galley. She wanted the bigger ship with speed, and it was good that she did. With the winds against them, they wouldn't have stood a chance in a fishing boat. So it all kind of worked out. And she thinks to herself that she's so close, and her fingers are still throbbing from where the dagger cut her. But the pain now is her reminder that lest she forgets what happened. So it's interesting that what also snapped her out of that reverie of grief-stricken mother is also now her constant reminder of what they did to Bran. They tried to kill him. They tried to kill me type thing. And it says she can't bend two of the fingers.
So, that kind of, and not to bring it into a dark tone, but it almost makes me think of the suicidal tendencies, people that cut themselves to, it's very, had she not done it defending from an assassin, maybe that's the kind of thinking she might have gone with, where the self-inflicted pain, just the pain to drive and motivate her is very...
Yeah, that's an interesting point.
So, I mean, it's Lady Stoneheart is what I'm
True,
saying.
yeah.
She's it's very dark thinking.
But she isn't able to bend two fingers on her left hand, and all the other ones were slow as well. But she thinks that was a small enough price to pay for Bran's life. She would happily, I'm sure, give up her entire hand if it meant saving Bran. But at this point, Rodrik comes up on deck, and Morio... Whoops.
I know. I've been yelling about
Stop
that fucking pen the whole time.
You haven't been yelling. You've been giving me passive-aggressive looks.
And hand gestures.
Fucking bitch.
Hand gestures.
Rodrik comes back up on deck, and Morio greets him through his forked green beard, which Kat notes the Tyroshi love bright colors, especially in their facial hair, which always, for some reason, and I know that this came out, Don't Crucify Me, I know it came out before the Hunger Games, but I always think of, the crazily dressed
Well, just how
people.
weird.
That's
it's a very strange, eccentric look compared to what you're used to. So.
Rodrik, it says, is looking better. He's been having a rough time at sea.
Poor Rodrik.
he had almost fallen over when a sudden storm had unexpectedly gripped him near Dragonstone. He somehow managed to grab onto a rope and hold on until 3 of Morio's men were able to help him back in.
Yeah.
And he was seasick, basically, from that point on.
So here's the question that I know the answer to, but is this the storm that Bran saw? Because obviously we don't think so.
I think yes and no. I think he did see a storm clouds on the horizon, but it was so oversighted by the storm that is brewing.
Yeah, well, we as the reader know that it's this big storm.
But I'm sure if Bran focused in enough, he could have said like, "Oh yeah, there's weird meteorological weather patterns that are gonna fuck with their trip." But I think he was more looking at the broader strokes of like they're heading toward a much bigger storm than the one they're about to endure. But Cat tells Ser Rodrik that their voyage will end soon, and he even kind of quips like, "So soon." He's not having a good time. She says he looks odd without his great white whiskers, but after puking his brains out, he kind of agreed to the razor because he was getting bits of it.
It was a bit of a mess.
That's gross.
A bit of a mess.
That's gross. Mm-hmm. So Morio leaves them to discuss their business that they need to take care of in King's Landing.
Yeah, so that's when they're going to start talking about what they plan on doing, how they want to go visit the Master at Arms there at the castle.
As she says this to Ser Rodrik, she's gripping the dagger underneath her cloak and just holding it as another reassurance, another reminder. And yeah, they are just kind of going to go seek out the Master of Arms and pray he can be trusted.
Yeah, so his name, Sir Aaron, what is it, Sardinger? Santagar, that's it. I can't read my writing, so. So Sir Aaron Santagar, and I noticed, like, I've never heard this fucking name before. Yeah. Like, I've never heard of this guy.
I've been paying specific attention to names and
who's where and where we're meeting characters, and I've never heard of Sir Aaron Santagar. Is that what we decided it was?
Aaron Santagar, yeah.
Yeah, and like...
Ser Rodrik describes him as a vain man, but an honest one. But honestly, Rodrik is more concerned about being cited than being...
Yeah,
betrayed by this man.
Yeah, he's worried about the people in court, less so than the Master at Arms.
Catelyn immediately, when he brings this up, thinks of Littlefinger. And it says his face swam up before her, a boy's face, though he was a boy no longer.
He was given the name Littlefinger by her brother Edmure when they were children, back when he was a little boy, because his family held some modest holdings on the smallest of the fingers up in the Vale. And so he was just Littlefinger.
They call him Lord Baelish now, though, as he has sort of risen pretty high. Rodrik is stumbling around trying to find a polite word for Baelish, but Cat is way past delicacy.
Well, it's more that she was, because he was like, "Oh, Lord Baelish, didn't he once?" He was looking for the right words to say.
Yeah, and Cat's like beyond giving a shit. She thinks to
which
herself,
we saw in the chapter, her other chapter with Ned, that she's past that false modesty shit. Like, Lewin's seen her naked, not a problem. Just fucking get in here and show us the letter. You, Rodrik, like.
Just say what's on your mind.
We're adults. Yes, Baelish was in love with me.
And she thinks to herself that he was her father's ward. They had grown up together. She had thought of him as a brother, but his feelings were much more than that. When Catelyn was betrothed to marry Brandon Stark, Petyr had challenged him to a duel for her hand.
Good for you, little boy.
Brandon was 20 and Petyr was 15 at the time. The only reason Brandon spared him was because she begged him to, and he left him a scar running from his chest down to his navel. And her father sent Petyr away, and she hadn't seen him since then. It did, however, mention that he had wrote to her after Brandon was killed. And I'm really curious what was in that letter, but she burned it unread.
Now, she says she burned it unread.
Yeah.
I wanted to say this, too, real quick, since we're getting an introduction into this character, Littlefinger, Petyr Baelish. Lord Baelish, the moneymaker. If you're a listener coming to us from watching the show and you're new to the books, Petyr Baelish is not quite the same as he is portrayed on the show. And gotta love D&D for their work on the HBO series. It's great. We love it. But Baelish is not the character that he's portrayed there in very specific ways. He's much more charismatic and likable, and I'm just trying to say that I heart Petyr Baelish in the books.
In the books, he has really no equal, except for Book Varys. Yeah. But Book Varys, again, is very different from Show Varys.
So Petyr Baelish is, not to say that he's not vile or a terrible person. His cunning, the way he gets what he wants is less weaselly and much more demanding.
And the way that with a man like Petyr Baelish, just little side thoughts in a chapter that isn't his, these thoughts about Catelyn, they're significant to his story. Knowing that Petyr Baelish stayed with them and grew up with them and was close with her and Edmure and Lysa is significant for what he is planning and thinking and doing at this very fucking moment. He is already engaged with Lysa, and not engaged to be married, but engaged in plans with Lysa, even though she's just a pawn and has no clue. He's already using this specific moment here, like this relationship that was built in a thought she's thinking about when they were kids. He's using that already, and we don't know it, of course, right.
And you got to remember, this is also a huge curveball to him, because while he obviously has, and again, this is full spoiler, so if you were dumb enough to come in here and not listen to our first warning, like, it's getting real deep here. We all know that Petyr Baelish did the poisoning of Jon Arryn.
Yeah.
And
Lysa.
Lysa, and had Lysa, do everything. And he didn't anticipate Jaime Lannister throwing Bran out the window. And then an assassin being sent with the dagger that he may have actually owned at one point. But again, that could very well just be conjecture. Him attempting to take credit to put everything directly on the imp.
Here's my do you think he cares? Because all he really wanted with killing Jon Arryn and getting the king to go north was to cause strife between the Starks and the Lannisters for the first part of his plan.
That's it, and that's why I think it's just a curveball to him.
So Jaime pushing Bran out the window, that's achieving more strife. Catelyn and Tyrion, that's more strife.
And that's why I think he did deal that, go that way. And that's all I was just saying, is that this isn't what he expected. This just happened to play right into
adaptable.
His... Exactly. It's not, he didn't get his throat slit.
Because, as we know, it's Joffrey who sent the cat's paw after Bran.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's not Littlefinger, and we'll get into it, obviously, in this chapter, but he plays it off like he knows something, and at this point he probably has no fucking clue.
That's what I'm saying. He may have owned a dagger, but whether or not he plays it to he's going to. You know what? Yeah, I used to own this, but you know who I lost it to, and that's something I'll point out. We'll get more into that.
Anyway, the letter. Do you think she read it, or do you think she actually burned it?
I think she has it
still.
I don't think she burned it. And so
do
I
you think Lady Stoneheart will bring that up?
But see, and that's what makes me think that she just burned it. Yeah. And it's just
because unless it comes up, what's the point?
But to me, it's.
What do you think it contains? Is it him just professing his love and trying now that Brandon's dead?
That's really it. What else would it be? I'm going to avenge.
Is he foolish enough? He knows that she would immediately be betrothed to the next.
If not, then it was just an apology, just because an ashamed boy after being slashed down. But
that was sort of where I leaned to, was maybe it was an apology. If it was an apology, and Catelyn had read it, do you think it would have changed Littlefinger's trajectory? If she could have forgiven him and sort of
written him back and said, "I understand."
Made him. You were a fucking boy in puberty, growing up with two girls.
If it led to him coming north to visit, as a, what, you apologized, come meet my family. Come meet Ned.
My question boils down to is if Catelyn had shown some, not necessarily affection, because obviously she doesn't feel that way, and that's okay. She has every right to. But...
Well, so I think this might answer the question before you really even have to. I think that Littlefinger's out to cause chaos at this point. I don't think that was caused necessarily by Brandon I think he's just a psychopath, but not in the Joffrey way where he just wants to cause this physical harm. He just wants to cause chaos. I don't think he wants to rule. I don't think he wants to be in the power. I think he enjoys playing with people. And what better way than just to move around? Granted, I think he also has that attachment towards Cat of all the people he has had any kind of
it's sort of that
emotional tie.
idealistic picture of like, I'll get what I want and I'll have this woman beside me because I've loved her since I was a boy. I get that. But anyway, moving on, Rodrik mentions that Littlefinger now sits on the small council, and Catelyn thinks, I knew he would rise high. He was always clever, even as a boy. But it is one thing to be clever and another to be wise, and I wonder what the years have done to him.
Yeah, I really, really like that quote.
I did as well. Catelyn she's so inquisitive. She's got such a thinker's mind, and I really enjoy that. She is very smart and wise when she applies it. Yeah, it is one thing to be clever. It is another thing to be wise. So is he clever and just kind of playing these schemes, but everybody sees through it, or is he wise? And I think, as we learn, he's a good mixture of both. Littlefinger, because I think the point you were making about bringing up the show, he's kind of not as detested in the books at first. Like, people
enjoy
trust
his
him
presence
and are willing to deal with him.
He's the master of coin. Like, they know that he's capable. Barracks at the door again. Mm-hmm. They know he's capable, or else they wouldn't put him in charge of the finances of the kingdom.
That's it. And he, later on, we'll get from him himself that the master of coin has to be personable, or else how else are you going to make these deals? And,
right. I feel like he's much more comparable to a good car salesman.
And I think that was always my issue with the show's portrayal is I always found myself questioning of like, if everybody knows no one wants to fucking deal with this guy, why are people still dealing with this guy? Right. It doesn't make sense. Aidan Gillian, I think did a great portrayal of Petyr Baelish, but it doesn't make sense for him to be detestable because he's got to be this charismatic. He runs a whorehouse, he wants people to be welcome and come into his business. And so I think it gets painted much better here in the book. Yeah,
and I think part of it was the writing, because I think that the actor really did portray him very good. Yeah. And I don't completely detest.
I like Petyr Baelish. Definitely,
it was just very different, much different, and he was. I feel like Aidan Gillian there put it off more of that sleazy vibe.
Yeah, he was more sketchy and sleazy.
Whereas,
Lemony Snicket's a series of unfortunate events. That creepy uncle.
This one is much more likable, and he's a little harder to just pass off as untrustworthy.
So some shouting begins, and it comes down from the crow's nest, and King's Landing comes into view atop its 3 high hills, and there's some really, really good description.
What a friggin' majestic description of it. Like, Catelyn, and I like that it goes to show, I was thinking about it when I was reading that part, the difference between seeing the point of views from Catelyn, an adult, versus, for instance, Bran. Just the detail that we're picking up.
The things she notices.
Because she's picking up the architectural structure, but she starts by saying, 300-400 years ago, this was just, that was all covered in forest up there, all woods, until there was a small little structure that Aegon came down from Storm's End, Dragonstone rather, and
this is where his army put ashore.
Yeah.
And he built his first little crude fort on the highest hill, and from it grew and spread now as far as she can see.
Maegor, right? Is it Maegor? Aegon. It was Aegon.
Aegon the Conqueror. Yeah. And so I'm just going to read this because but it says, this is her description of the city. Now the city covered the shore as far as Catelyn could see, manses and arbors and granaries, brick storehouses and timbered inns and merchant stalls, taverns and graveyards and brothels, all piled one on another. She could hear the clamor of the fish market even at this distance. Between the buildings were broad roads lined with trees, wandering crookback streets and alleys so narrow that 2 men could not walk abreast. Visenya's hill was crowned by the great sept of Baelor, with its 7 crystal towers. Across the city, on the hill of Rheneas, stood the blackened walls of the dragon pit, its huge dome collapsing into ruin, its bronze doors closed now for a century. The Street of Sisters ran between them, straight as an arrow. The city walls rose in the distance, high and strong. That it's just, you get this, a sense of overcrowding and clustered and claustrophobia, but this grand scale of these grand people building grand monuments here.
And I feel like that's part of the reason that Martin had Catelyn arrive before the King's Company, because then all the children are there, and there's the potential that their point of view would be the first one to see King's Landing.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think it would have been nearly as detailed if it came from one of their
Oh, definitely.
views.
It would have been more fantastical.
It would have been, there would have been much, especially like with the 7 crystals on top. Like Sansa would, be gushing, and the Sept of Baelor, like that probably is that where marriages take place in the Sept.
So a lot, tons of stuff.
So she would be picturing herself there with Joffrey, and like so she's gonna focus
That's
in on
it.
that
Yeah,
stuff.
exactly. That's where we wed one day.
Maybe not when she arrives now.
But speaking of what Catelyn's picking up, she also notices that the waterfront is crowded with ships dropping off, loading cargo, and she sees the Queen's big galley hanging out in the harbor, and it's just a very active city. And then it says, and above it all stood the Red Keep, frowning down from Aegon's high hill. That's just interesting because that's where the king rules. That's the Capitol building right there, and it's frowning down on the rest of the city. It's imposing. It's menacing. It's watching. It's like this big brother type thing. And Catelyn, I mean, as we'll learn, it's a trending fucking theme in Catelyn of dread and doom and gloom, but you get a really sort of imposing view of this beautiful city, but looming above it all is this dark castle that's frowning down. But the tower, Aegon's, the Red Keep had 7 huge drum towers with iron ramparts, vaulted halls, covered bridges, barracks, dungeons, granaries, and massive walls. Aegon had commanded it built, and his son Maegor the Cruel had seen it complete.
And then they had, which I was listening. One of the podcasts I listened to was talking about Maegor today, the Cruel, which it's just really fun. It's in the Fire and Blood, so if you haven't read that, make sure you read that stuff. You can read about them specifically, but I like how the next part takes place, where he had all of the stonemasons, all of the architects, anybody that was involved with building this,
dead,
killed. So that way, nobody but the Dragon Lords would have
only the blood of the dragon would ever know the secret. I don't mean to interrupt, but I think the wording of this is specific.
I was kind of leading.
Only the blood of the dragon would ever know the secrets of the fortress the Dragon Lords had built. So, if Dany comes to the Red Keep, is she gonna
Dany or
Jon Snow?
If
if it's what we're thinking, if one of them shows up at the Red Keep, are they gonna be able to find some secret? Is there a cache of eggs? Is there
something that
I felt like that was a significant little
I like
quote.
that. That's cool.
But it says, yet now the banners were golden, not black, and where once was a dragon was now a prancing stag. I just think that that's great imagery. The times have changed. The Dragon Lords are no longer
it's
in existence, basically.
I kind of see this little time shift there in my head when I was reading that part. That was definitely cool.
But the Storm Dancer is getting closer to shore, and Rodrik says he would like to enter the city alone and bring Ser Rodrik to her in a safer place. And Cat says that he's just as likely to be recognized as she is.
And he's like, nah.
Not with these whiskers.
I couldn't recognize me.
My ma couldn't recognize me.
Yeah, and so he does mention that his mother was the last person to see him without a beard, and she's been dead for 40 years. So there's nobody that's going to recognize him without a beard. It's just not going to happen. And
Morio approaches at this point, and he asks if she's going to need assistance in getting her things to the castle. And foolishly, she tells him that they aren't going to the castle, and she inquires about an inn. I don't know if I picked up on my first read, but while I was reading through, I was just like, we've got it, and hire some discreet, you can do better.
Just go find an inn at that point.
You can do better, Catelyn. That was a blunder there. He knows one, but
and that was something I commented earlier and said I would bring up again now. That's when it said that Rodrik warned her that Taroshi are just known for being money hunters. You don't think this is information? You're in King's Landing. You've known that you're heading to King's Landing.
That's it.
You know where the Master
Everything
Whispers
has a price here,
and you should have foresaw that. That's you're smart enough to see that. You know the game. Don't make that mistake.
And then even going on, he answers that he knows of an inn, but first he wants the second half of the payment as well as the stags that she had promised. for the oarsman that she reminds him, and he responds with, "Oh, of a certainty. But perhaps I'll hold on to it for them. That way they don't spend it here on drink or women." And Rodrik mentions that there's worse ways to spend it, and winter is coming. But Catelyn doesn't really give a shit how they spend it. But just to be sure, she goes and pays the oarsman herself, and a copper to the two men who brought her things to the inn that Morio suggests. So he gets his payment, we're assuming. It doesn't really specify, but I'm assuming he does. And she pays the oarsman, pays these men to bring her things to the inn that he suggests, and that's it. He leaves her mind. And even Rodrik, like, doesn't have an issue or speak up or anything, and it just... I mean, it's sending red flags up for me, but
I think it's really just that they're that unaccustomed to the way things are happening here in the city with who's in charge and what's going on, where Varys has his little birds.
But they find it's a rambling old place on Eel Alley that Morio suggests, but it's comfortable enough, and best of all, the sour old crone who owns it didn't ask for names, so Catelyn's pretty pleased with that.
And it's funny that she thinks about that right now, but she doesn't think about that kind of
with
the location and with Morio. I suppose it also might be because she met him in
she could
White
be
Harbor.
assuming he's a northern, he's honorable, but yeah, it sort of shows some ignorance on her part, but Rodrik suggests that she avoids the common room. Even here, no one knows who could be watching. Rodrik dresses in a dark cloak. He's got a hood pulled up. He's got his dagger, long sword, and ringmail underneath. And he says he'll return with Lord Aeron before nightfall. And he tells Cat that she should rest.
Yo, I got the biggest chuckle at this point. She took a cat nap.
Oh my fucking god. Jesus.
She took a cat nap.
Yeah. Cat thinks that she was tired and the journey was long and fatiguing.
So what does she do?
She watches Rodrik from the window.
Oh, yeah, she does do
like
that.
a cat in the windowsill.
And then?
Until he's lost in the crowd. And then she decides to take his advice. And it says she had no trouble falling asleep. And she takes a little cat nap.
Yes.
She wakes to a pounding on the door. She sits up, and she sees outside the sun is setting. She hadn't intended to sleep this long, but then another pound kind of shakes her from that, and somebody says, "Open up in the name of the king."
Yo, that, like, for half a second, I forgot what was happening when, like, I read this part, and I was like, yo, that's scary. That's like, I suppose what it would feel like if you're on the wrong side of the law, and you hear, open up, please.
Yeah,
and it's like, oh, uh-oh.
So she wraps herself in a cloak and grabs the dagger before she unlatches the door. And from the ringmail and the golden cloaks, she knows that these are men of the city watch. And they push into her room. And so they're a little aggressive. The leader of them sees the dagger and smiles at her and tells her, "There's no need for that, my lady. We're to escort you to the castle." And she asks, "By whose authority?" And he holds up a ribbon, and it's got the seal of a mockingbird. And she immediately knows it's Petyr. And she thinks to herself, so soon? She thinks that something must have happened to Ser Rodrik if this is already happening. People already know. And she asks the leader, "Do you know who I am?" And he says, "No, my lady. Littlefinger only wanted you brought to him and to see that you weren't mistreated." So, Kat's trying to, like, work this shit out. She's still stretching from her cat nap.
Yeah, she's still not quite fully dressed, so she tells them they need to excuse themselves she can get herself ready to head.
And so she washes her hands and wraps them in some clean linen and struggles to lace up her bodice, and she's wondering how Littlefinger knew she was here.
And this is when she comes to the conclusion that she was a dumbass.
Well, she knows that Ser Rodrik would never tell him, and thinks old he might be, but he's stubborn and loyal to a fault. And she wondered if maybe the Lannisters made it here first, but dismisses that because Ned would have sought her out.
Exactly.
And then she thinks Morio, and it just says, "Damn him." Yeah, she made a huge blunder. Her and Rodrik, and I'm surprised Rodrik didn't suggest it. He wanted a smaller boat, but they should have lied about their names. Absolutely should not have told him who they were and where they were going. So that was mistake number one.
Not to mention, it's very likely that the docks are being watched.
Oh, definitely.
And so to assume that when there's two strangers from the north, that the Master of Whisperers or anybody isn't going to be a bit curious as to who these strangers are, what they're doing riding on this expensive boat. It's not cheap to ride one of them fucking things.
But they, as she gets dressed, she sees that they had brought a horse for her, and Kat thought that she could feel the eyes of the city on her as she rode with the guards in their golden cloaks.
So I wonder if that's actually, if there really were a bunch of people watching her, or if she just kind of assumed since she's being
I would
escorted
say
down.
because King's Landing is so fucking overcrowded that it's a safe chance. Like, I don't think they're, watching her nefariously and like, ooh, a northerner. But I think it's, there's a...
Just people watching
she's being escorted, clearly, so there's some import to her. And they get to the Red Keep, and she notices that the portcullis is down, but the castle windows are all alive with flickering candlelight. They leave their horses, and they enter a postern door and go up what seem like endless steps to a tower. And she gets to the top, and it says he was alone in the room, seated at a heavy wooden table, an oil lamp beside him as he wrote. And he looks up at her and says, "Cat." And it's Littlefinger.
There he is.
In the flesh. And Kat says, "Why was I brought here in this fashion?" She's pretty pissed. And he stands and he waves the guards out. And after they leave, he asks if she was mistreated. I ordered them not to. His first concern is not that she's pissed that she was brought here, but that his guards mistreated her. Like, he's not getting the affront that she sees. And then he sees her hands, and he asks about her hands. And she just ignores him, pissed off as all hell, and says, "As a boy, you still knew the meaning of courtesy." And he immediately kind of cows and says, like, his intent was not to anger her. His intent was not to anger her. Catelyn notices that Petyr is a small man, slender and quick, with sharp features and laughing gray-green eyes and a little pointed chin beard, and he had threads of silver in his dark hair, even though he was still relatively young.
So I really like the laughing gray-green eyes. Not because of the color. I don't think the color, I'm not...
The laughing.
The fact that what I picture that as is that his eyes just have those wrinkles, those lines that show that he's regularly smiling. He's always jovial and happy, and that's one of those big differences in again, if you're coming from the show, that you don't really see as much, that he's just always jesting and he's always happy, very much like Renly was earlier.
Yeah.
Just this, outgoing, happy guy.
She asks him how he knew she was there, and he answers that Lord Varys knows all. And then he goes on to say that Varys will be joining them shortly, but he wanted to see her alone first. She completely ignores this, thinking that, so the king's spider found me, and he advises her, I wouldn't call him that.
Yeah, I like that.
It hurts his feelings.
I really like that he asked her, how many years has it been? And she just completely blows off his questions. Oh, so it was the spider that figured.
Yeah, again, she's not here to play games and be coy. She's here to figure her shit out.
And yeah, he warns, I would make sure that you don't let Lord Varys hear you calling him the spider. His little birds are... Would it really be... It's not like calling, Jaime Lannister Kingslayer to his face and, not being like Brienne of Tarth who can handle their business. Or, going to Joffrey's face.
Well, I think that him saying that, I wouldn't let him hear you, is kind of coupled with him saying nothing happens in this city without Varys knowing. Oftentimes, he knows about it before it happens. I think the threat is in there.
Yeah.
Where oftentimes he knows about it before it happens because he can make the things happen. So I think there's a little bit of a threat, but and then he goes on to say that he has little birds everywhere, and the yada yada yada.
They discovered that she was there, and he wanted to go to somebody, but since Selmy and Renly were sent up north to escort the king and the king's guard all down to King's Landing. I said king a lot more than I intended to right there.
And he mentions that Stannis is gone to Dragonstone.
Yes.
Stannis is gone. So who else is there? But Petyr kind of is not a little offended, but he just, why not me? Like, why wouldn't Varys tell me? I'm on the council. I'm important, type of thing.
And he also mentions the only other option was Pycelle. So.
And then he also says that Varys also knows that Lysa and Petyr are friendly. And that is specifically mentioned that Petyr has a vested interest in this family. He grew up with them, so supposedly Varys thought to bring him this information because he knows that him and Lysa are close. So Petyr would have us believe. And then Catelyn starts to say, does Varys know about, and Littlefinger cuts her off. Lord Varys knows everything, except why you are here. what is she about to ask Littlefinger if Varys knows about? Is this the Tansy thing? Is this, like, what is this question that she's at? Does he know that you got Lysa pregnant? Is it that? Is that what she's about to ask?
I don't know, because I didn't really think of it that far, like, because she does. She says, does he know,
Yeah, does Varys know about, and then he cuts her off. Lord Varys knows everything, except why you're here. Like
I was going, I kind of guess I was assuming that she was going to say something about, like, them arriving, just in general, or, you know, if...
Wow. Oh, yeah, I immediately...
But yeah, no, that's...
My thought went to... Because that's it. He mentions that Varys knows Lysa and Petyr are friends, and that's when she asks this question. Does Varys know about... Varys knows everything.
Yeah.
And, you know, if it is the Tansy thing, you know, Petyr wouldn't want to, like, say that in so many words. He wouldn't want to say that at all, really, I think. I don't think he will ever hear Littlefinger utter the words, like, I got Lysa pregnant. I don't think it's a sore subject to him. It's just, you know, he was a boy, and it was a mistake thing that ended up getting him a little pawn he could use. But that just stood out to me. You know, what question was she about to ask? Does Varys knows? But Catelyn says, in answer to "Except why you're here," that she yearns for her husband and her daughters, but Littlefinger ain't buying that shit. He says, and he asks her, "What are the Tully words? They are family, duty, honor, all of which require you to remain in Winterfell, where your husband requires you to be right now, where the hand of the king asked you to be.
Everything you're not doing.
Everything
currently.
you aren't doing, so something must have happened. This trip speaks of a certain urgency, and he begs her, let me help you. And then there is a little knock at the door, and in comes our favorite little master of whispers. Varys is plump, perfumed, and hairless as an egg. And he comes in on his little slippers, and he greets Cat by taking her hands in his, and she notices that his flesh is soft and moist. And he expresses concern for, your poor hands.
His breath smells like lilacs. Is that what it says?
Yeah,
in there?
something, yeah.
And like, I feel like he's just a pleasant person to be around. Like, she said that they were soft and moist, but I think that's not in like a gross way when he touched it with her hands. Where it said that his skin was soft and moist, but that, you know, he's perfumed, he's powdered, he's soft and moist, like just this pleasant little eunuch.
I don't know if I think pleasant, but yeah, Varys is showing concern for her hands and for Bran. He's very sorry
he's
for what
happened. Offering to hook her up with some salves.
Yeah,
and he's
do
very
all sorts of stuff.
sorry.
And Kat thinks to herself that Lord Varys' title is just a courtesy. He was Lord of nothing except his web of lies. And that's her internal monologue. Varys is still going on, and he even says, I have great esteem for your husband, our new hand of the king.
Yeah, they all kind of just start spouting out their love for mostly Robert here, and how, you know, great... Littlefinger gets a little thing in, a jab there at Robert, almost like he knows something there. Almost like he's kind of planting, like a... You know, some people also don't like Robert, so... because of them saying how much they all love him.
But talk turns to more recent events, and she thinks to herself that she refuses to speak of Bran with these two, and she will not let them see her grief. She's not really comfortable with this situation at all. Varys sits and asks to see the dagger, and Kat is kind of blown away by this and thinks, was he a spider or an enchanter or worse? And that's just interesting to me because, as we know, I don't know if it's heavily implied in the book or stated in the book, but we know from the show that Varys despises magic. So the fact that he's sort of
I got entertained by, you know, first he got very excited about the fact that Kat mentioned that he was the one that had her brought there. Mm-hmm. And then when he sits down and asks to see the dagger, it was he giggled like a girl.
Yeah.
And it's like he's so excited to see it. And it's
weird.
And like I said, like he seemed kind of pleasant when he walked in, this plump, warm, you know, inviting character. And then he's got this moment where he has this high pitched. Granted, I suppose if you get your nut chopped off, you're probably not going to be singing.
True.
Well, it's not your nuts though, huh? It's just your...
that's the question. Do they take the stone and the pillars? But I believe as a eunuch, it's cutting off the balls, and I don't know if they leave your dick or not.
I think that goes too.
But
I mean, that's what I.
But Littlefinger asked him in the show straight up. So
true story.
But speaking of, Littlefinger's completely lost. He asks like, "What dagger?" Catelyn is freaking out because she thinks something was done to Ser Rodrik, and Varys assures her nothing's been done to him. He stopped here earlier. Then he went and visited Ser Aaron in the armory, and they spoke of a certain dagger there. And then they walk back to the inn that you're staying at, and they're there right now drinking. And he says, Ser Rodrik was very distressed to find you gone. Varys literally, like, has fucking real-time updates.
He's currently right now.
I pinged his cell phone. He's walking down the street of Steel, and
he's on his 11th drink.
Like, it's just savage. And, like, yeah, he was terrified to find you gone. Catelyn's been gone, what, maybe 45 minutes, an hour at most to take her to this walk.
And he still knows where. Granted, he just arrived 5 minutes ago.
Exactly, yeah.
And so it was like he finished up watching them, and
went to this meeting, the report on them. He asks about the dagger again, and she pulls it out this time, and she kind of just throws it on the table. And he examines it and cuts his thumb and squeals like a little girl again and starts sucking on it. And
I feel like it's not a squeal of pain, because he does say, "Oh, it's sharp," but I feel like it's again an excited. Like, almost like
I feel like he's smart enough to know that this is Valyrian steel.
And why would you put your finger on
I feel like it's an act. For
That's
Catelyn.
what I meant.
And Littlefinger notes that nothing holds an edge like Valyrian steel, and this is when Littlefinger picks up the dagger and begins flipping it from hand to hand even talks, and testing it.
Like, I'm picturing just this little Loki figure walking up. And now, all of a sudden, he's just got this dagger, and it's like, so he clearly has some kind of skills with at least a dagger, if not this dagger.
And he says, if you're looking for the owner of this dagger, you should have come to me. And Catelyn asks him, and if I had, what would you have told me? And he says, there's only one knife like this in King's Landing. And then he kind of throws it to his hand, and he launches it at the door with a practiced flick of his wrist, and it perfectly goes and sticks in the door. And he says, it's mine. And then he says, until the tourney of Joffrey's last name day. And he pulls the dagger back out from the door, and he says, I had backed Sir Jaime in the joust, as did half of the court. When Loras Tyrell unhorsed him, many people lost bets. But Cat says, who did you lose the knife to? And before we get there, Littlefinger had backed Sir Jaime in the joust, as did half the court, he says. He gives his answer, as we know, it's well, and we'll get to the actual quote, but he names Tyrion Lannister. Why would Tyrion not back his brother Jaime?
No, yeah, I have that noted. Horseshit. Yeah, this is horseshit.
He's caught in a lie. But and very dramatically, Cat demands who he lost the knife to, and he says, the imp, said Littlefinger, as Lord Varys watched her face, Tyrion Lannister. And that's it. Chapter done.
Yes,
Curtain down.
The whole thing should be bullshit, because Tyrion would not bet against.
He would not back Loras Tyrell over Sir Jaime at all.
Especially Loras
Never
Tyrell.
In a million years. So Littlefinger fucked up there.
Right. Yes, absolutely. I completely agree.
What was Varys watching her face for? Like, what was he looking for there?
To see whether she believed him or not.
You think?
I think to see, because.
So do you think they're in cahoots on this?
Again, I don't think he's seen that dagger, or because they would have the new. Like, you telling me that there's nobody that sent any kind of message from King's Landing about the attack? Was that? I mean, is there? Who's to say that Varys and Littlefinger don't already know about the fact that Bran had an assassin attack them? I guess that, that's not necessarily completely likely, but it's potentially possible. And if that's the case, then he even mentions this is a very well-balanced knife. So what he's saying is that anybody that's somewhat adept at any kind of dagger can pick up this perfectly balanced blade and have a decent throw at a door, like it's practiced. It doesn't mean he's practiced with that one specifically. So it seems like regardless of whether he owned it or not, he was going to turn this to his advantage by pointing the finger at a Lannister. And he's going to get away with it because Catelyn's, again, not thinking completely straight.
I mean, he says until the tourney at Joffrey's name day, that's when he lost it. Maybe he lost it to Joffrey. Because it's in the king's caravan, the dagger that's used.
That's true, yeah.
So, it, like, every good lie has a sprinkle of truth. Like, I think maybe he did own the dagger, and at the tournament of Joffrey's name day, he did lose it, but it wasn't to Tyrion Lannister, because Tyrion Lannister probably won quite a bit of gold, or lost quite a bit of gold that day, betting on Jaime. So, it's just bullshit. And it's brilliant because Varys is working his angle of trying to watch her face for a reaction, and Littlefinger's just playing such a deep game that Cat can't even begin to fathom it. And it's excellent. It's great because she's trying her damnedest, and she's doing well to pick up on these signs and be careful. But we keep seeing these slip ups with Morio and now with Littlefinger and Varys, the two top players. Like, you're so far out of your league.
That's what's funny is that, like, because she decided to come here by herself at this time, she got herself cornered by the two, the Master of Whisperers and Petyr fucking Baelish.
So I think there's quite a few options, but you got an inductee for this chapter.
Oh, wow. So I suppose because of the new canon, it's gonna be Halfta. I'll have to give it to Loras Tyrell for starting the War of the Five Kings, because if he just let Jaime Lannister win, then Tyrion would not have won that dagger, so nobody would have been able to make an attempt on Bran's life.
We just went through about how that whole story was bullshit, but I guess that's a good one.
You put me on the spot. What do you want from me?
We do this every episode. Mine is going to go to Varys just because he creeps me out in this one. Like, I don't think he's a comforting presence at all. I think it's an act in it.
I think he's attempting to portray that.
Yeah, like, that's what it seems to me, is he's very badly trying to play this giggly.
Hey, sister!
Yeah, what up? Yeah, like, what up, girlfriend? Let's dish. Dish.
That's all I see.
He's just kicking his fucking feet on the edge of his bed while he's got his Samsung Razr phone and he's just texting away. Gossip girl.
Gotcha.
No, I love Varys. I love his I do adore. I think he's a creepy fucking presence, but Varys is one of my favorite characters, especially with what I believe he is up to.
He likes mermaids.
I fucking hate you. I hate that theory so much. This was an excellent chapter, so we hope you guys are reading along with us, and send us in some of your inductees. Next week we are going to... Not next week. I keep saying next week.
Well, it's going to start becoming next week because we have... Well, I suppose this is what we'll announce.
It's perfect.
We will begin doing on our Thursdays, the episode we release will be a show recap for season 8. We're just going to do a 6-7 episode series, little mini series.
Probably 7 episode to do a last one after the season wraps up. But yeah, every Thursday episode, we're going to be covering the episode that aired the previous Sunday.
The HBO series.
So,
of Game of
as we all know, the season 8 starts on As we all know, season 8 starts on Sunday the 14th of April. So our first season 8 episode would be the 18th of April, and it would just continue the following weeks into
We're
May.
not quite sure how that's gonna. We think we're looking at probably having an attempt to record immediately after or shortly thereafter to give an initial reaction.
Yeah, we kind of want to come hot off the presses with our thoughts and our feelings.
At the same time, though, we also, if it's too emotional, we might turn into weeping bitches that can't handle our shit.
It's not even a might for me at this point. I know we're Brotherhood Without Manners, and I'm like I can be a savage bitch, but it's not a might for me. This last season's gonna fucking wreck me.
It's gonna be.
So
it's gonna be.
We're gonna try to record. We're gonna try to watch the episode as soon as it airs, and then come into our booth and lay it down.
But we might have to come back.
But we might have to maybe record the next Monday, the day after, to just sort of have a minute to
cope and figure out what's happening with our lives.
But ideally, we would like to get our initial thoughts right after the episode. So that's something to look forward to. As always, we are on all the socials, which Nate is going to happily read for you now.
Thanks, Guy.
You're welcome.
Thanks. So we're our facebook.com/Brotherhood Podcast. My Twitter handle @Manners Without. I'm stealing that one now. Well, you haven't. Do you log on? Do you know how to log into that? Do you know what?
I'm logged into my phone.
www.twitter.com.
Right now, 32 notifications for Twitter.
Are you serious?
I think so. 32 or 21.
Jagaloon. You're a prancing jackanape.
Damn it.
So says.
Oh, 21, not 32.
Barry.
21 notifications for Twitter.
Jesus.
Anyway,
Instagram at Brotherhood Without, our Gmail, which is the one thing that Zach's praying for. He's watching for that. Usually I check it well before him anyway.
That's
but
a lie.
Without Manners Brotherhood at gmail.com. And our Patreon, which we are definitely going to be recording Mercy this weekend and get that set up. So remember, we'll be getting some bonus sample
So there's
chapters.
actually rewards now, you guys.
Hooray!
So,
besides just the cool stuff that's already there.
Also on Spotify, iTunes, all the good stuff. Did you say those already?
No, but leave us some reviews.
Rate and review on iTunes,
rate,
please.
Like,
that's how we
subscribe.
get found, and more people can find us. And spread the word. If you think we're funny and your friends are, trying to gear up, or I understand a lot of people are going to be probably looking into podcasts more after the season ends, but, just word of mouth is a great way too. We're not really, I don't know, I lost my train of thought there. Just spread the word and get people to listen to us and write into us because we want interactivity and we're really excited about the way things are going. Next episode, we are going to be doing John 3. So John will be arriving at the wall.
Yes,
to meet
I've
some
been
interesting characters up
so
there.
looking forward to John arriving at the wall.
So, again, write into us. Let us know your inductees for John 3. We would love to read them aloud at the end of the show here alongside ours.
You?
And if not, just check us out on the socials.
Hit us up. Let us just say hi. Throw some theories our way. We'll chat with you. We'll give you a shout out on here if we like you enough.
Alrighty, guys. We will see you on the next one.
Ballard to Harris.
Peace.